Hey, I'm Tre Lopushinsky, and I'm joined by Councillor Jim Lequiere for Council Corner, where twice a month I'll be meeting with a member of Council to chat about ongoing topics discussed in the community, as well as items from recent Council meetings. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jim.
Thanks for having us, Trey.
There's a lot of topics today that I want to talk about from the last council meeting, but to start it off on some bigger topics, ongoing topics in the community. I know at Energeticcity.ca we've already started planning for wildfire season. Given the season last year that included the Donnie Creek wildfire, with how the drought conditions have been here in the region, we're definitely trying to plan ahead. And I'm just wondering, for the city, what kind of planning goes into the wildfire season? When do you guys start that off? And what are those conversations like?
Well, thanks for the question, Trey. Last year was a devastating fire season. And of course, I think it's on everybody's mind right now with no moisture in the area, right? No snowpack, no moisture. What's it going to be like in 2024? Mm-hmm. And so, if and when time comes, I can tell you the city will be ready as far as the emergency support services. So we've been working on it. There is some updates that have come with the system, and so we'll be ready to support our neighbors if and when time comes.
And I know there's a plan to eventually try and make the ESS center at the old RCMP detachment. Hasn't happened completely yet. I know there's the city applied for funding to get that. So I'm assuming in this coming season they'll most likely be running out of the Pomeroy Sports Center. With that being said, when do you guys start looking for volunteers and people to help out? Is it kind of right before the season, or does it come earlier than that?
Right, so good question. And first of all, Fort St. John is a very caring community, as we all know, not only with their money, but with their time as well. And in the past, our support staff for the emergency support services, they're doing training already, right? Mm-hmm. Not only with staff, but with volunteers from last year. Mm-hmm. So if there is some volunteers out there, that want to get involved with the emergency support services, just go to the Fort St. John website, and there is a link there to click and fill out some forms, and they'll be contacted and get some training done.
That is absolutely awesome. And my last question on the wildfire plans, I guess, it doesn't sound like it, but is there any changes from last year going into this year, given that it might be a bad season again?
Right. So let's touch wood that it's not a bad season it was last year, because that was devastating for our whole area. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question there, the provincial government, they've come up with some changes to the Emergency Management Act. And so they've been working with the city as far as what the little changes could be. The city's working with them to tweak a few things. And I know one thing that will be a little bit different is the form that they fill out this year. When there's clients that come to the emergency support system services, whether it be at the Pomeroy or whether it be at the North Peace Arena, we'll sit them down, and there's a long form to fill out with a pen or a pencil. Mm-hmm. That is all now going to be done digitally, right online. So, it'll save time, and we'll be able to process more clients as need be.
Well, and I was going to say, I would assume that would make the process faster too, because of how many, unfortunately, how many people had to access the services last year, right?
Yeah, and of course, like we say, Trey, last year it was just devastating. We supported hundreds of our fellow neighbors last year. So,
but I mean, on the positive side for that, and we did put out a story with Energetic City. I know the city put out something about that. They, thanks to all the volunteers that helped out during the during that time with ESS and just other things in the community, just helping out on their own time and going out to help residents when needed or whatever the case may be. So that is definitely huge. That if it does get to the worst case scenario, the community is going to support community.
No, fantastic. And that's what we like to do as a community of Fort St. John, is help our neighbors.
Awesome. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the seniors complex that is going to be at the old Fort St. John Hospital site. Many seniors advocates, including Margaret Little, has expressed the need for seniors housing, and the city has helped kind of push the development along after Harlequin at Prairie Rose Park was moved, and the whole situation there. What else can be done from the city side to do more for seniors?
Well, first of all, that particular development that you're talking about behind the new hospital, that was unfortunate that it didn't go through. But, the city of Fort St. John, we're committed to working with, various corporations and groups to get senior housing in town. And right now we are working with VRS. They're a large corporation throughout British Columbia. And
I
they
believe
have,
they're based in Vancouver.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, they are. And they work with a lot of nonprofit organizations to build senior housing. And right now we're working with them at the old hospital site. They are going to be turning sod this spring. And it's going to be 115 units from 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartments. So we're looking forward to that. What do the groups like Save Our Seniors, and our community in general, we all have parents, we all have grandparents, and we want them to age in place, right? So anything Fort St. John can do to help bring in senior housing into town is a plus.
So for advocates that are coming to the city and expressing the needs that seniors have, I mean, outside of the partnership with VRS Communities, is there any other partnerships that the city has going on? I know that obviously you guys are talking with, like you said, the groups like Save Our Northern Seniors and just community groups in general, but yeah, is there anything else kind of in the plans to support seniors? There has been a report that's come out about the lack of seniors housing, not just in our community, but just across the province, across Canada as a whole. I just kind of want to know and get a good picture of what those discussions are like between the city and just community members.
Right. So, first and foremost, the city of Fort St. John, we're very committed to, like I said earlier, allowing our seniors to age in place. And as far as any other large corporations that we may be working with at the time, there isn't any other than RVS. And at this point, we listen to the community because for years and years, they've been saying to us as a community and council, we need more housing for our seniors, right? So just so you know, going forward, anything that the council can do to bring more housing to the community, we're willing to work and listen to the various groups like Save Our Northern Seniors. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to bring up was the topic of council to council meetings with Indigenous communities. That was brought up at a meeting in January, and it started in January as well. I know you guys have met up with Doig River First Nation and Blueberry River First Nation so far. What are some of the topics of conversation in those meetings, like what you can delve in on?
Right, Trey. So this actually conversation with face-to-face to First Nation Council, this actually started a couple years ago, even before the pandemic and COVID. But now the pandemic is over. Touch wood, right? Mayor Hansen said about a month ago, we're going to start getting back to having face-to-face meetings with our First Nations neighbors. So we had staff reach out to the Blueberry First Nations and the Doig First Nations, and we just in the last couple of weeks, we have council. We went out and had face-to-face meetings with them, and some of the things that were on the agenda were economic development opportunities within the city boundaries, for the First Nations, as well as healthcare. Healthcare is a big concern, not only for Fort St. John, but for the surrounding areas and our First Nation neighbors, right? Because we all go to the same hospital, we all go to the same clinics. So that was one of the topics on the agenda that was talked about lots.
And so was there any action items coming out of the meetings, or was it essentially just discussions to get on the same page in the hopes that leads to something in the future, so that you kind of touch base on what each community wants and needs and the services that are being utilized, and then you guys can go from there? Or was there anything of like, oh, okay, let's do something about this?
Right, Trey. So those are all good questions. And yeah, there was a few action items that came out. And one of them I can discuss with you is the fact that over the years, the Fort St. John City Council and staff, we've written numerous letters to Northern Health and, the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, right, about our concern of healthcare or lack of it in the north here. And we also now know that having our face-to-face council meetings with the First Nations, that they have also been writing letters, right? So one of the action items that's going to come out is we're going to write a letter together. right? And the chiefs are going to sign it. Mayor Hansen's going to sign it. So, you know, there's that old saying, there's power in numbers. So we're going to let them know that there's a lot of people up in the northern area here that rely on good health services, which we're not getting.
And that will be a super positive for the future when other issues arise, where you have that partnership, again, what you said, power in numbers, so you guys can come to the table and do the same thing for other topics, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. My last topic I want to talk about was just super interesting for me. Someone who moved to Fort St. John 3.5 years ago to learn a little bit about the history that came out of this recent council meeting on Monday, which was it was about the city's mascot and the name Frozen John. So some research was done on the origin of the name after concerns from residents about it being named after an Indigenous person who died due to exposure, which turned out not to be the case, according to the research done. Why was it important for the city to take these concerns seriously and look into the origins?
Well, first of all, you know, I mean, anytime, supposedly someone's passed away, right, from hypothermia or freezing to death, it's a concern, right? But what I can tell you is, you mentioned that Frozen John may have been a First Nations person, right? Well, you know, we had some concern from the citizens asking us about that. So what we did is we had the staff reach out to Doik First Nations, and they reached out to their elders. And the elders talked about it, and they thought about it, and they came back and they said, for as long as they can remember, there was nobody in this area that, succumbed to the cold and froze to death. So with that said, you know, we thought, okay, the rumor of Frozen John being a First Nations person is not true.
And then the museum did some research into the matter as well, right?
Exactly. So it's kind of like Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story. So the rest of the story goes, well, then who was Frozen John? So what happened is we had the staff reach out to the North Peace Museum Society. And over the years, they've done some research on various projects. And they did some research on this. And what they found was very interesting, is that Frozen John was actually a Swedish immigrant by the name of August Malmquist. And he perished from hypothermia. He froze to death in 1918, just on the outskirts of the city at the time. And, with that said, I would just like to say, on behalf of the city council, we'd like to send our condolences to the family members of August Malmquist, if there's any relatives left in the area, because, someone's lost their life here, right? But history is history. You can't rewrite it. You shouldn't rewrite it. But the interesting part about this is August Malmquist, he had a nickname, right? And his nickname was, as we all know, or maybe don't know, was Honest John. Okay? So over a period of days, weeks, months, and years, of course, we all know Honest John morphed over to Frozen John, right? So there's a little bit of folklore that goes along with that. And what's going to happen in the future is the city staff is going to put a link on our website that if anybody wants to know the history behind our mascot, Frozen John, they're more than welcome to go on and find that out, that history is history. You can't rewrite it. You shouldn't rewrite it. It was unfortunate that someone did have to pass away, but that's the folklore behind our mascot, Frozen John.
Well, and his legacy lives on with that as well, too. I guess my question, too, is if it did happen to be an Indigenous person, what would be the process there? Would you guys just nix the mascot name, or would that be conversations with Doig to see if there's any actions that they want to be taken and talks with the elders? Like, how would that have worked? I know it's just hypothetical because that's not going to happen, but do you kind of know what the process would be like if that were the case?
Right. So like we mentioned earlier, when we thought maybe it may have been a First Nations person, we did reach out to our First Nations neighbor, and they did talk to their elders. And with the elders remembering or not remembering anybody passing away. So if it did end up being a First Nations person, we would definitely, again, reach out to our First Nations neighbors and say, how would you like to handle this? In the honor of someone's name, would you like a mascot, or would you just like us to nix the Frozen John? So I think that would be dealt with in partnership with the Doig, for sure.
And you know, you're a longtime resident. You grew up here. What do you think of the historical impact of the name? Obviously, you knew about it. Yeah, kind of. What's your take on it growing up and knowing about it?
Well, I'm actually very interesting and surprised of the final outcome that the North Peace Museum came up with. Like, who knew it was a Swedish immigrant named August, right, Melquist, that passed away in 1918. So it's really nice that the city staff is going to put that link on there, so other people that may have not lived here for any length of time or just passing through, what does the city have to offer? Oh, there's a link here about the mascot. Well, that is really interesting. Yeah, so you know, it was like Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story, and it would be a great conversation piece, particularly when we have High on Ice this weekend. I might even bring that up.
Oh, that would be absolutely awesome. And yes, High on Ice this weekend. You know, coming to close on the interview, Jim, thank you so much for chatting with me today. There was a lot more topics I wanted to talk about, but I'm glad we covered what we did talk about, especially, you know, with wildfire was just a big one for me because, you know, not trying to scare anyone, it's just us being prepared, right? And, you know, there are a lot of organizations and a lot of people in town that will be prepared for that come wildfire season. So thank you so much for meeting with me today, Jim.
You're welcome, Trey, and it's always been a pleasure. So thank you very much for number 3, Councillor's Corner.
Episode number 3 of Councillor Lopushinsky. We will have the next episode out in a couple of weeks, so make sure you stay tuned on Energeticcity.ca or the City of Fort St. John's Facebook page, as well as the website. Yeah, thanks, Ryan, Communications Manager, helping us out. Thanks again, Jim.
You're welcome.